I'm Julia Davis, a film major who stumbled into the business world with no experience in 2006. I was able to fail enough to learn how to run a 7-figure business and have provided consulting services to over 200 individually owned companies. Through this podcast, I hope to provide some perspective on the growth and grit it takes to accomplish big goals and share some hard lessons I've had to learn along the way. Welcome back to the Growth and Grit podcast. I'm here today with Haley Hoover, who has created, designed, and built a small business that specializes in drying rack that can be multifunctional. The company is called Winnie Lu, and we're going to hear all about her journey into starting this business, what she did before this. So if you're a mom or an entrepreneur or anybody in business, you're going to get a lot out of this episode. I just really appreciate you sitting down with me today. So thanks for being on.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
Yeah. So first, I want to get into a little bit of your history.
Yeah.
So you started your career in pharmaceutical sales.
Yes. So I, even before that, thought that I wanted to be a nurse, thought I wanted to go to nursing school. And then, so I was working in a medical practice and then realized that I was like really intrigued by the sales side of things. Loved it when the reps would come in and share about, medications or lab tests or whatever. And so luckily I kind of was plucked from that field into pharmaceutical sales. And so what was interesting is I didn't love pharma. I really liked being part of a team, and I felt like I was very kind of on an island a little bit when I was doing pharmaceutical sales. But I think, hindsight being 2020, there were a lot of products that I was selling that I didn't necessarily believe in. And I do think that there is strategy in selling those products. And we can talk about that, down the road. But I ended up leaving the pharmaceutical sales industry and went into hospital sales. So I did like provider relations, business development for hospitals. And it was basically, that was a much better fit for me. So the skills that I had learned from pharmaceuticals, I was able to take over to the hospital, have the conversations with the physicians and the community, and convince them to try to bring their patients and their cases to the hospital that I worked for. So that was super fun because it felt beneficial to the patient, it felt beneficial to the physician, and obviously it was beneficial to the hospital. So that was super exciting. But I'm also married to somebody who's in healthcare, and we have moved around a lot. And so following his career, I've started over a couple times. And so from the business development on the hospital side, I went to insurance consulting in the Medicare Advantage space. And so that was also a sales element too, trying to get providers to encourage their patients to do their annual wellness screenings or, just try to lower their overall annual cost of healthcare. And so there was a lot of selling to get the doctors to let you in the door, and then selling the doctors on encouraging their patients. And so that was exciting. And then I moved into practice management. So another move from my husband's career took me into practice management. And that was interesting because I learned how to manage teams and people and try to, build camaraderie and just have people be excited about working for something that wasn't necessarily theirs. And that's sales in and of itself too. So the last move that we had, I finally was tired of starting over. So I took all of my healthcare experience and started a virtual assistant business that is niche, specifically focused on helping healthcare professionals, so consultants, medical practices, executives, with just the general admin and operational day-to-day stuff. But then I got a wild hair when I was kind of realized that a third baby was not in the cards for me, and decided to take on the product industry. And so that's where my current love is, my product business.
What do you think, like rewinding back to the sales part of what your journey, which I think people don't realize that like truly everything is sales.
100%.
Right. Like communication, talking to doctors. They're like, well, I don't want to be in sales. We hear that all the time where someone's like, well, I don't want to do sales. It's like sales is literally everything that you do if you want to make money.
Stay-at-home moms are salespeople. The person that's restocking the grocery counter is a salesperson. We are all, everything in life. If you're trying to convince somebody, do we go to Mexican over Italian for dinner? You're a salesperson. So I think that if you can start to like look at it from that lens, and that it's less daunting. And I think that then people can have more of like a personal approach to how they sell whatever they're trying to sell.
Right. I love that. And I think sometimes it's challenging, especially, when we're interviewing people or talking to people. Some people never want to work on commission, where they're like, I don't want to work on commission. The commission seems scary.
Yep.
But it truly is like the way that you have control over your income, right? Because you've worked in positions where you've gotten probably paid a certain amount to do the job. And then you've also worked based on...
And that incentive is huge. And I think that, as an entrepreneur, I think that a lot of my entrepreneurial mind started in sales, because you're responsible for your territory. Your book of business is yours. And even though your product that you may be trying to sell is not something that you created, you have to own it. And you have to be the face of it for whoever you're trying to market to. And so I think that when we can think about like even just day-to-day skills of how we're selling.
I think with sales, it's such a transferable skill, right? Like you can transfer it to anything, and people are afraid of commission.
Yes.
So some people are like, hey, commission seems scary. I don't want to work on commission. When I do interviews for people, one of their first questions is always, is this commission?
Yeah.
And they're just terrified of it. But I think it gives you a certain element of control over what you're making. So,
and it gives you skin in the game. I mean, even when I was a practice manager for a medical practice, I was asking to have a portion of my salary be commission based on staff retention and patient growth, because I think that if you're just knowing every month or every 2 weeks that you're collecting the same amount, that's okay. But for me, I'm highly competitive, and I find it very entertaining to some degree to like see how far we can push the envelope and see how far we can take something. And I think that when you give people, no matter where they fall on, if they're an entry-level employee or the owner of the company, if you give everybody kind of skin in the game to grow, it makes them feel a little bit of autonomy that gives them confidence. And it just helps, I think, elevate the whole business. And so I don't think people should be afraid of commission. I think that they should embrace it as like a fun game or a challenge. Totally. And just see how far they can go.
I love that. That's so true. And I think that helps kind of debunk that, because in some industries, people are like, I don't want to do that. But in reality, it gives you so much leverage and skill and skin in the game and all the things. So I think it's just such a positive.
And there, I've worked where it's no commission. I've worked where it's 50-50. I've worked where if you hit a certain threshold, then maybe you get a commission. I've had capped commissions, and I've never been turned off or not excited about a commission.
Yeah. It seems like extra money.
Yeah. I'm like, this is a fun little goal, and let's see how far we can take it.
And you're truly paid based on what you can accomplish, which I think is also very positive.
It's so crazy. And I think sometimes people that may be afraid of commission are the people that we should also be red flagging. It's like, are you going to have the grit to be successful selling where we need you to sell?
True.
Because if you're afraid of the commission factor, you're kind of telling me that you're already afraid of selling, and you're afraid of going out there and meeting the requirements that I'm asking for you to do in this role. And I think that that's a big, as an interviewer for, hiring people, that's a big red flag to me, at least.
Bingo. You're right on. Exactly. It is. It's a huge red flag. And it's a good message for people to hear, because if people are like, oh, I was thinking about saying this, like, just give it a shot. Like, you never know what you can accomplish. Like, I didn't come in with sales experience when I started my first job. Did you?
No. And I think that one of the coolest things about sales that I have learned is, especially when I was doing pharmaceuticals and when I was working in the business development side for the hospital, that was where I learned there's a lot smarter people than that I'm talking to, trying to tell a doctor that is a specialist on a medication that I didn't go to medical school, and I'm trying to say, like, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. and they're ready to just like debunk and debunk. And you have to have kind of the confidence to say, I don't know what you're talking about, or to say, you know what, I'm not sure. But I'm more than happy to find out for you. Give me 24 hours and I'll be back in touch. And I think that that was one of the biggest skills that I learned in those two fields, was just having integrity and having the confidence to say, I don't know, but I will get back to you. Or, kind of stroke the ego a little bit. Like, you know way more about this than I do. Like, break this down into layman's terms for me so that I can follow along. And then maybe I can supply the answer that you're seeking, but I just am not understanding what you're asking at this moment in time. So I think that just being authentic and like real to yourself and not being afraid of saying, I don't know, or I'm unsure, or, this feels scary.
That's
Jump
so
off
true.
that cliff and go for it. And I think that working off of strict commission is one of those things where it's like, you may be more motivated by it than you realize. You're just scared because we obviously have bills to pay.
Right. Right. Let's fast forward to now you've created a product, right? So you're like, hey, I'm sick of career changes. We're moving all the time. I don't want to keep doing this. I'm going to create something on my own that you can take with you to any territory, right? Because literally, if you own a business, the business moves with you.
Yep.
So now you create a product. So what inspired you to create the Winnie Lu Heiress drying rack?
Yeah. So I mean, it goes way back. It's funny. I always tell people, like, the memories or the experiences that you have when you're in your youth and up through adulthood, don't ever discredit, because Winnie Lu is truly a culmination of all of the things that I've done. I started babysitting when I was 11 and then eventually became a professional nanny through college. And I always hated the bottle drying rack. I thought they were ugly. I thought they were disgusting. And I could not understand why they didn't hold all of the stuff, And also what I didn't understand was, why are they the same color as like a kid's toy when it is not for the kid? It is for the parents. And so as I started to think about, like, I'm not able to have this third child and I really want to do something creative, I just started thinking about like what bugged me as a new mom. And it was like, the bottle drying rack didn't just bug me as a new mom. It bugged me all the way back, 20 years when I was a nanny and a babysitter. So I started thinking about just the things that I didn't like. And then I went online and looked at all the other bottle racks that are on the market and looked at all the negative reviews that people had put down and was like, all right, well, how can I change that? And also put an aesthetic spin on it, and sustainability, and just being really resourceful and good stewards of all of our earth.
Yeah.
I wanted to create something that was long lasting and sustainable. So kind of all of those things together led me to create the Heiress drying rack. And it's interesting because even though it's a product business, it's still very much, I'm selling it every day.
Right. Here on the podcast.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. And I think it's not just that, right? Like, this product is multifunctional, which I think is so cool, because it's not just for bottles. You can use it for cups. You can use it for wine glasses. You can use it for, people have it in their bathroom for scrunchies and hair ties and all the things. And then other people can use it to dry, makeup brushes, whatever. But it's kind of like this versatile product. What makes it different? Like, what makes it unique to not only the design and how beautiful it looks, because it is beautiful. I looked at it. It's very beautiful.
Thank you.
But the way you designed it to like be functional. Mm-hmm. And I like that it has like that silicone base because it doesn't move around, right?
Yes. And so one of the biggest questions that I get about the silicone base, so the base of it is food grade silicone, and it's just super easy to maintain. It's moldable, or you can
pop it off.
Pop it, yeah. And you can get into like the creases and so you're not getting like the weird pink film or the mold that you do in some of these other ones, because you can really get in there and wipe it out. Some people do ask me, they're like, why is there no beak on it to drain? But I wanted you to be able to move it away from your sink and tuck it away, because that's the thing with bottles is you're always using them and you can't store them away. So if you've got a baby that's drinking, 8 to 10 bottles a day, that's like your whole set of bottles.
Right.
And so you're really never putting them away for like the first year. So I wanted you to have a space where you could use it by the sink. You can pull down the silicone side to let it drain if you need to, but then you can also move it off to the side, and then it's not like getting water all over your cabinet or your countertop. And then the rack part itself is a gold-plated stainless steel. So the gold has some antimicrobial elements to it. The stainless steel is rust-proof. You can put it, the whole thing can go in the dishwasher and be sterilized and cleaned. But the specific shape of it is intended to be, you can use the inside flat part of the rack, and then there's U-shaped kind of prongs that go around the perimeter of it. And so you can put the bottles on the prongs, you can put pump parts in the middle. There's little, in the accessory drying cup, you can put your nipples on these little stands that go in the cup. There's just, the sky's the limit. It holds 12 baby bottles in 6 to 8 pump sessions.
Wow.
Yeah. And so that was something that was completely missing on the market. We just think that bottle fed babies are not being fed by a breast pump. And it's like, well, how else do you think they're getting it? But then beyond that, it holds like all of your sippy cups. So if you have multiple kids and you've got, I don't know how your house is, but mine's got cups galore and water bottles everywhere.
Yep.
You can use it for that. The lunchbox, the bento boxes are great because they just stack up and line up. But we use it a lot for our wine glasses. So it holds 10 to 12 wine glasses in it as well. And they're not only securely stable on there, because that's a problem that we've had on like the rollout rack is that you tip one, they all fall over. And so this keeps them more secure.
Yeah.
But ultimately it's intended to be, I wanted there to be something to hold on to those memories of the early years that are so foggy. And I just think that muscle memory of like putting a baby bottle at midnight, that you've just cleaned when you're exhausted, like one day you're going to come back to that moment when you're, cleaning out a wine glass that you just shared with your kid on their 21st birthday. I want there to be those moments of like full circle, just keep them.
One of the things you don't have to get rid of once your kids are grown, which is like half your belongings, right?
And that's, as somebody who's moved a lot with babies, there's constantly like, do I keep this? Do I donate this? This is kind of gross to donate. Like, what do I do? And so even if you feel like you outgrow the Heiress, it's still something that can be gifted because it just maintains.
Great.
And the Heiress also has a lifetime warranty. So
I love that.
All the products are recyclable and guaranteed. So
now you're using all the skills that you've accumulated through all these years to be able to market and build this business. But I think people also don't realize time and money, like how much time and money you have to put on to get a product like this to market. People are like, oh, this is cool. Must have been easy.
Yeah. Like, there's a lot of people out, especially these days, that are like, oh, all you need is $10,000 to get a product to market. And it's like, you can get a hair tie to market for $10,000. But how are you differentiating your hair tie from the millions that are out there, That is wishful thinking. I think it depends on what you are truly looking to put out there. The time and money commitment is so great. I would always just encourage people that are thinking about bringing a product to market to really be passionate about what you're bringing to market, because it's a roller coaster.
How many times did you want to quit?
Ironically, I've never wanted to quit.
That's good.
Which is
you're
kind
on the right
of
track.
Crazy. Yeah. And there's been, don't get me wrong, there's been times where I'm like, why did I do this?
Yeah.
But I've never wanted to quit. I think that it's the most fun I've ever had in any career. I love that it's like all of the things that I've done in my, up till now of work. But I think it's so fun. And I love, like, I wouldn't have this business if I wasn't a mom. So I think that, and a lot of like what I talk about in my like social media and stuff is like comparing owning a product business to motherhood, and the similarities are wildly similar, but the time and money commitment is like the most similar part of all of it.
It's like it's like a child.
It
truly.
is. And like last night was my husband's birthday, and I have a call from my manufacturing rep at like 11 o'clock at night, just like, hey, quick thing, so it's like, then of course an hour later my kid's up because it's storming,
Right.
It's like they just don't stop.
Right.
But both rewarding, both so cool to like see where they're going. And
what would be your advice? Like if somebody wants to get into the product business and is like, I have this idea of this product that I want to create, what would be your best advice for that person? Like how much money will they need to have to get started? An estimate, obviously.
Yeah.
And like what type of commitment would they need to make and how long?
So that's a good question. And I think it really depends on what you're trying to bring to market. So if it's, what I didn't realize is that plastic is a real beast. So you can get silicone made like that. You can get stainless steel made like that. Plastic is a whole different animal. And so I would really encourage people to be thoughtful and do their due diligence to make sure that whatever materials they are considering to use, that they know all the different options, and because that's where things really get expensive. I would also encourage people to, if it's something that already exists on the market and you're trying to just make it better, go and buy every single competitor product and try it out and see what they did well and see what they didn't do well. Read reviews from those products and then change it. But you have to be, going back to the authenticity, you have to be authentic to who you are. So like if it's not something that you're truly passionate about, like I'm not creating fishing gear because I'm not passionate about fishing.
Right.
But I am passionate about helping new moms navigate the world of motherhood. And so for me to have a bottle drying rack for new moms is something I'm passionate about. I also love talking about using your mom skills in business. And so I think that you have to have passion in what you're trying to do, would be first and foremost. And then whatever budget you think you need, just triple it, because I know it's painful, but if you want to put out quality, I mean, this is your name, this is your blood, sweat, and tears, this is your time. And, for some, I'm very fortunate that my husband's job provides for us, and my virtual assistant business has financially backed my product business. But I mean, a lot of people don't have that luxury. And so I think that you really have to like take a big like overhead look at what is the potential for this, and is it going to be worth the risk? Because the risk can be quite large.
Right. Financially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you just pour your heart and soul into it, and you want it to be successful. And if it's not, you have to be able to
handle that too.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's tricky.
Yeah.
Was there any expectation that you had that you were like let down on? Was there something that you thought like, oh, it's going to go this way, and it didn't?
Oh yeah. I mean, every day. For example, towards the end of last year, I met with a representative from some of the big box stores like Williams-Sonoma and West Elm and those. And I thought that they were going to be a slam dunk because the person I talked to was like, this is an incredible product. And then when he went back to his team with it, they were like, we're going to pass on it because it's in the baby space. And so for me, I'm like, I thought that I had that in the bag. you know? And so it's kind of like, oh, where I think that this is an amazing product and the people that I'm friends and family with think it's an amazing product, that doesn't mean that it's for every market or for every person. And so kind of like humbling myself and being like, it's okay. You're going to hear no.
Yeah.
But every no is just a lesson. I mean, I went back from that conversation, and now I'm in other big box retailers that are more appropriately aligned with the brand as a whole. So it all works out.
For sure. If you could go back and give yourself advice, like at the beginning of this whole journey, what would it be?
From the product sales business or from just in general?
It could be in general, either.
I think that, so when I was in pharma sales, I was young and I knew I was good at selling pharmaceuticals because I knew how to talk to the practice. But I would start to lose confidence when a doctor would question me on something that I didn't feel good about. And at that point in the game, I would just nod my head and say yes. But later on, as I became more mature and kind of did more and more sales, being just honest and saying, like, I have no idea what you're talking about right now. Like, help me, explain it to me so that I can understand better and then I can help you get an answer. I think that being less afraid of admitting your flaws or admitting your weaknesses is actually huge, because that is something that builds trust in the person that you're selling to. And I think that if I would have just been more comfortable being uncomfortable, I would have probably enjoyed pharma a little bit more. And the same thing goes for today, even, with my virtual assistant business, like trying to pitch myself to a new client or a potential new client. If they say no, I have to be willing to hear that feedback and make a shift or realize, like, hey, we just weren't meant to work together. I think it's just not getting hung up or beat up on those moments where you feel like you're the underdog, because I think that there's a lot of growth opportunity in all of that.
I think people appreciate that too. Everyone's rooting for the underdog.
Yeah.
I think there's some charm in not knowing everything.
Yeah. And I had one of my doctors from when I did the work at the hospital, when I left that role, he was like, it's just different. Like, it was refreshing to have somebody that was like not so buttoned up all the time. And I think, there's obviously scenarios where you do need to be buttoned up, but I think that just being human, and especially on that type of an industry where everything is so like intense and serious, I think that just makes it more, you cut the fat a lot faster. Like you get to like that true connection with somebody. And I remember this doctor texting me after I had been gone a couple of months, and he was like, yeah, the new person's just not the same style. It's just a little different. And I'm like, we all just have to get used to the change, you know?
Yeah.
But I do think that having just the humility and the confidence, even if you don't feel confident, fake
That's
it.
Great advice. That's really good advice. So networking doesn't come easy for people, right? It's kind of challenging. And I know you've gotten some really great mentorship from people. How did you find that? Did you look it up and did it kind of stumble upon, or do you pay for it? Like what?
A mix of both.
Okay.
So I think back to my whole network from start to finish of life. And that's where I started. So for example, the person that does my branding and my website and all of that was my roommate in college. And we had kind of lost a little bit of touch. And then as I was starting to come into this, I tapped her, and her network has now, I've joined part of her network. And so I've met people through her. I think that just thinking about, like, don't be afraid to make the phone call to somebody that you're like, oh, I haven't talked to Tim in 20 years, but I know that he is in this industry that I'm interested in. Call him up. People love to be flattered to talk about whatever they are doing and spending their time on. And I think that no hurts, but only if you let it hurt. And I think that that's where networking can it gets exhausting. It's like dating, right? But you can make such a great network if you just look at like the people that are currently in your life, and then just tell them what you're up to and what you're looking for. And people genuinely do want to help. And I feel like the people that don't are probably not people you want in your network.
So true. How about mentorship? So you've gotten mentorship from people who have been in different, small business and growth and things like that. How did you find those people?
Yep. So I once went the wrong way. I went online and I vetted a couple of kind of like bigger name coaches on the product space at least. And while it was good for starting, the cost was not worth what I got out of it. There was just, felt like a number.
Yeah.
But that was a great learning experience because I learned enough to get me started, but I also learned how to interview for other mentors moving forward. And so now I am very intentional about because it's time too, who I work with. And just following people that have proven, it's hard when you see, especially social media these days, you've got like a 22-year-old in front of a Ferrari that's like, ask me how I made my millions,
Mm-hmm.
And people fall for that. And I think that you need to like really dig deep and ask people uncomfortable questions. Like, what did you do when you didn't have funding? What did you do when people kept telling you no to your product? What did you do when you didn't have any clients at all? Did you just like sit and twiddle your thumbs and hope someone would knock on your door? Or did you like get out there and try to rebrand or try to get new clients in the door? What did you do? I think that making sure that your network matches your same level of work ethic is important.
Huge. That's really, really huge.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Because otherwise you're going to be disappointed and you're going to feel like you've wasted your time and your money. And, I will say that like from the Winnie and Lu side of things, one of my biggest quote unquote regrets is the first business coach that I hired was very expensive. And I felt like the questions were only being asked if I was asking them. But when you're new to something, you sometimes don't know what to ask.
Right.
And so it was a big learning experience because I felt like I spent a lot more than I should have. I did learn some from them, but I didn't learn as much as I could have. And I think that now just being way pickier about those things is...
And then just taking action on what they tell you to do, right? I mean, like sometimes has there been a time where you're like, that advice seems weird or I don't necessarily want to do that, but then you took action on it and you saw a result and you're like, ah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, okay, so I'll be honest with you. Like the numbers stuff is like my least favorite part of the whole thing.
Right.
I can talk to a brick wall, but like if you ask me to add 2 and 2, like, wait a minute. And so I had to be very vulnerable with my mentors and say, hey, I am not great in this arena. I'm really strong in these areas. And they were like, okay, we will help you understand your numbers better. We will help you come up with a way that you can keep track of your numbers. And they did. And it was super helpful. And again, you have to trust who you're working with. I think that the trust factor is so huge. But you do need to also be honest about like where your weaknesses are. I outsource all of my weaknesses and then I just hold on to what I'm good at. And I think that that came over time with practice and just doing the work.
It's really great advice. And so where can people find this product? If they are hearing this and they're like, ooh, I want to look into this. I want to see where it is. How would they find it?
So the Eris Drying Rack is available on winnieandlu.com. It is also available on Amazon and Walmart.com.
Okay.
And later on this month, it'll be on Bye Bye Baby.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Thank you.
So thanks so much for being here with
Thanks
us today. I appreciate the conversation.
Yes.
This is great for the whole audience. I think everyone's going to get a lot out of this.
Awesome. Well, thank you for having me. I loved it.
That's awesome.